You may not have realised, but Rory McIlroy is actually playing a different brand of lob wedge. He's not playing a tailor-made lob wedge. So in this video, we're going to talk a little bit of why he's using a different brand, what the brand is, and what that lob wedge is actually like. I've been very fortunate. I've actually hit one of Rory's backup wedges, so I can give you a hands-on experience of why he plays that and what's so good about it. So first off, let's listen to Rory explain why he is playing that wedge.
All conditions. I've never liked testing around with different points week to week, so to find one that's like it, hopefully it can work everywhere.
Now you've heard Rory talk about there how he likes to have the one lob wedge for all conditions. What he's meaning there is a lot of guys on tour, because they play in different conditions, they have to change the lob wedge more specifically when the conditions change. So if you get a firm course, we'll play something with a low bounce. When we get a soft course, maybe a bit higher bounce. And then we've also got different grind options. So it might depend on the sand, what type of grind we want. So what you find is a lot of these guys on tour will have a lob wedge and they'll change it, you know, maybe 4 or 5 times a year, depending on what conditions are. They might have, you know, some guys will have like 4 different grinds and bounces in that lob wedge. Most guys might have 2 or 3. 2 or 3 is normally really common in that lob wedge. And Rory wasn't liking the fact that every different condition that he played have to change his wedge. So what he did is he's gone back to his old faithful almost, which is a Titleist Vogi. So Rory used to play Vogies back in the day, and he's gone with a 58 degree bent to 59, which adds 1 degree of bounce. And what's different about this is it's a K grind. Now, K grind's like the ultimate bunker wedge. Stock-wise, we see a 14 degree bounce K, which is great for your average player getting out of the bunker. However, for Rory, who's a very skilled player, 14 degree bounce is just way too much. So he's gone for the low bounce K option. Now, this wedge is a little bit different than the standard stock K grind. It's actually the K-Star grind, which has just been released. I'll pop a link in the description so you can know where to get it from. And this K-Star grind is slightly different in the fact that the normal K's got a really wide sole. The normal low bounce K, should I say. It's got a very wide sole. I'll put a picture up. But it's not got much heel relief, so not much ground out on the heel. And it's not got this pre-worn leading edge. So it's a very good sort of bunker wedge or like short chipping wedge. Where it lacks a little bit is when we open up the face and try and hit a high shot with the standard low bounce. Sometimes that leading edge can sit a little bit off the ground. It can promote like a steeper angle of attack, or you might thin it a little bit. So a lot of the tall guys who play an open face like Rory don't like that not having any heel relief. So what they've done on this K-Star grind, which is now released, I'm sure because Rory's been playing it and he's not a Titleist staffer, is they've taken that heel off, and then you can see there's almost like a ribbon on that back edge. So that just allows that club to sit a little bit more flush to the ground when he is hitting that open face shot. Now on the front side, much like the MBs, there's a little bit of a pre-worn leading edge. Now what this does, it effectively gives you a little bit more bounce on fuller shots. So it makes the wedge more forgiving off when you're hitting a full shot, basically. Simple as that. Because of that pre-worn leading edge, it just makes it harder to dig into the ground straight away. So that means it's a little bit easier in softer conditions. Because it is low bounce, we've got that little bit of that edge on the front just shaved down. It effectively puts more bounce on it, so it just comes through a little bit easier through the turf when we are playing softer conditions. So those little changes, and you see how it's like a little ribbon on the sole, really, really make a difference. And what makes that wedge so versatile is the fact it's got the low bounce, which the players like, but then it's got a wide sole. So the wider sole really helps him out in bunkers. It helps with a bit of forgiveness. But then because the guys, Aaron Durl has made this K-Star grind whereby taken off the heel and then added that pre-worn leading edge, we've then got a little bit more forgiveness on full shots, and we can also open up. Now, that makes it a really versatile wedge. Now, in terms of actually hitting the wedge, the first thing I noticed was how soft Rory's wedge is. And that is because it's a raw finish. Now, the standard ones that you get in the shops are generally Tour Chrome, which look great. They don't really rust unless you really grit them up. And we don't see a lot of guys on tour playing the Tour Chrome. Now, 2 reasons for that. First is that Vogi on tour don't actually offer the Tour Chrome on the van. They only have the raw finish. Now, that provides them, when they do custom grinds, which you do with a lot of guys, if you did that to a Tour Chrome, it'd rust on the spots where it had been ground off. So you'd have like lovely Tour Chrome and then rusty spots where the grind has been. Whereas the raw, it'll still rust because it's raw, but because of those grind marks, it patinas all over. So it looks a bit cleaner in the bag. And then the other big benefit, because it's not plated, it's actually a lot softer. Really, really soft. And that's one thing that I noticed hitting Rory's wedge, how soft that club head is. Now, you could argue as well, the rust maybe adds a bit more spin. I've heard that. I'm not sure the evidence is there to support it. Some things I see that seem to support a raw wedge will spin a little bit more. Others might suggest that the raw red wedge, if I can even say it, the rust can sometimes get in the grooves, and then that reduces the surface area of the groove, so it can actually impart a little less spin. I'm not sure. The one thing I will say is those raw wedges are a completely different feel. They are so soft. And Rory's, that K-Star grind is great. And the other thing that I mentioned earlier in the video is he has it set to 59 degrees. So that adds 1 more degree of bounce and takes a little bit of offset out. So he's effectively playing a 7-degree bounce lob wedge, which isn't that low. When you see guys playing the T or the L grind, which is more like 4 degrees bounce. So I know that's a little bit geeky and a little bit in depth, but that's kind of what I'm about. I'm a mad golf scientist almost, but hopefully with that, it kind of gives you the understanding of why guys play different wedges. Rory specifically not using the TaylorMade wedge, he's using the Titleist wedge. And the whole reason is not necessarily the feel, but the sole grind and how it's grind. And that's where Vogi is so good. If you look at stock models with Vogi, everything is so customizable in terms of, not obviously customizable in terms of changing things like they have on the tour, but because they have so many options in the grinds, you can't really compete with them. So they're giving every player an option there. So it's a really good way of understanding of how much these guys value the variance of bounce and of grind, and also how much it can help your game. So don't negate bounce, don't negate the grind, get a wedge fitting, learn from Rory, and hopefully that's helped you understand a little bit why Rory's paid all these tens of millions by TaylorMade, but still plays a Vogi.